The most underrated acoustic panels that you can have hanging on a wall right now would be this one, not these ones. The reason being is these ones right here, they cost you around, well, between $60 and $100 each. So if you have a dozen, if you have a big room that you want to drown out a lot of the noise, you want to make it sound a lot better, you'll need a lot of acoustic panels. They say fill up the wall about 20 to 30%, probably around 25% as a goalpost, and it can cost you. These acoustic panels, however, around $20 or less each. The reason being is I built this myself, and most likely you have all of the tools already at home to build this, but you'll need to buy some material. In this video, I'll show you exactly what to get and how to build these for cheap, and it is quite simple. You don't need that many skills in construction to build an acoustic panel, and you'll save a lot of money, especially if you have a large room. So let's get started. So basically all you will need is a tape measure, some drywall screws. You can just use a screwdriver, nothing fancy. A drill would work, better and faster, but if you don't have it, you really don't need it. So what I use to install the material on the acoustic panel is just a simple staple gun. And the staples that I chose are the 1/4 inch staples, nothing too fancy. Another thing that you can get is just a saw. You don't need anything too fancy. And I have some wood for the frame. This is just basically 1x3 that I bought because I find that they're perfect for what I need. And also some insulation. Here all I'm doing is measuring every piece of wood I'm going to cut by 2 feet, so 24 inches. This acoustic panel will be a perfect square. To feel confident in making the edges straighter, and also if you want to make different shapes, using a miter box is the way to go. And usually if you don't have a saw, you can buy a saw and have a miter box come with it for just a few dollars more, so it is quite worth it. And I'll have a link in the description below of this very one I'm using. Now before putting your screws, I would recommend using an acoustic sealant or even wood glue just to make sure everything stays into place. And also, acoustic sealant does help in absorbing vibrations. Now it's time to drill 2 screws per corner to hold everything into place. Of course, it's a lot better to use a drill to drill pre-drilled holes to avoid splitting the wood. But today we won't be doing that, just because a lot of people out there don't have drills, and I'm going to show you that even a little bit of split isn't a big deal in the end of this entire project. And also that is where the wood glue and the acoustic sealant comes in, because if there's a little bit of a split, just ooze some of it into it and everything should be fine. Once you have that first corner complete, repeat the exact same thing with every other corner you have. Now that the frame is complete, it is now time to put your wooden backing to hold the insulation into place. Just measure the length of the interior of the frame and cut 2 pieces of wood to size. All you need to make sure is that the backing is flush with the back of the frame. And screw 2 screws on each latch to hold it into place. And don't forget to put a little bit of wood glue or acoustic sealant. The end result should be just like this, perfect for installing your insulation right in it. Now, time to put some gloves on because this insulation has a little bit of fiberglass in it. This type of insulation is perfect for making different shapes and sizes of acoustic panels because they are thinner and easy to just cut with scissors compared to using the big bat insulation from Safe & Sound, which are good for larger acoustic panels that you don't really have to cut too much into size. What's nice about this insulation, you can just cut it with just small craft scissors. You don't need to buy heavy-duty scissors, but of course, big heavy-duty scissors will work a lot better. Just cut to size and basically just place your insulation in it. Just make sure that the foil backing is in the middle, never facing outward and always facing inward. If you face it outward, it will just basically deflect the sound and make this acoustic panel completely worthless. For this type of setup, I'm using 2 pieces of insulation, which should fit perfectly. And I will have both pieces of insulation have the foil backing facing the inside. Now that the acoustic panels are complete, it is now time to wrap it up in fabric. This fabric comes from trademark Soundproofing. They have a variety of different types of fabric, different colors. And one thing to make sure of, however, when you're choosing a fabric for acoustic panels, make sure that it is a fabric that is plush, because you do not want a rigid fabric that will in turn deflect sound more than absorb it. So that is one important thing to always consider when choosing the fabric. Now the easiest way to install the fabric is just to lay it on the floor and to have your acoustic panel facing down onto the fabric. To make sure that your lines are as straight as can be, use a tape measure and measure around 5 to 6 inches all around and make the proper cuts so your fabric fits perfectly onto the backing of the acoustic panel. Now it's time to make those tiny cuts for the corners to make it quite easy to wrap it up just like a Christmas gift. All you need to do is draw a line about 1 inch away from the side of the panel, straight line that goes parallel to the bottom of the panel. This is a square panel, so it is quite simple. And then repeat this on every size, just like you see in the video. This is quite a good little trick to make those corners a lot easier to make it look quite perfect. Now it's time to get your staple gun and to start stapling the fabric onto the panel. Usually you would want to start on the longer side of the panel to make it much easier to work with. However, this is a square panel, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to start at the bottom and then move my way to the top and then do the corners and then do the sides. So how you start is to basically make sure that your panel is still quite in the middle of the fabric and then wrap the fabric tightly over the edge of the panel. You've measured it, so it should all fit quite perfectly. Once it is tight enough, staple your first staple. Usually I'd start at the very sides, then go into the middle, and then go to the other end, making sure that it is tight as you go with the staple gun. Also make sure that there are no creases while you're stapling. Now it's time to make the corners. Firstly, you need to cut the excess fabric from each corners. Leave about 1 to 2 inches of fabric, just enough so you can make a proper corner. Any excess fabric will simply get in your way and will just bunch up the corners. Now that you've got rid of the excess fabric, it is now time to perfect the corners. Just take your time while doing this. Firstly is to just make sure that when you're folding the fabric on the side and on the bottom, just make sure that it is tight. And also be careful not to use too many staples, because when the product is finished, you will be able to see that it looks like there's too many staples coming through. Now that the corner is tightly stapled in, it is now time to make the final fold. Just make sure that the bottom or the side, whichever you're doing, make sure that it is a straight line from the corner going towards the back and neatly tucked in before placing the staples. And as I said earlier, look for the creases and just pull the fabric tightly to avoid any creases. As you can see, this is not rocket science. I am not an expert on making these types of panels and especially wrapping Christmas presents, but I think I'm doing pretty good, and you will also. And once you're done, this is what the finished product looks like. Look at the corners. I mean, come on, it looks pretty darn good.